2025. The sky over Ukraine descended into chaos. In less than 30 minutes, Russia launched 45 K-35 cruise missiles and 120 Shahed-type drones, a strike package worth over $200 million. Targets: Kiev, Poltava, and Dnipropetrovsk, home to nearly 6 million civilians. Moscow called it Operation Winter Strike. Ukraine called it a deliberate assault, a show of power that plunged entire cities into darkness. But deep beneath Kiev, silence turned into calculation. Operation Spiral Gate was launched. 30 F-16 fighters, upgraded with AN/APG-68 radars and armed with AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles, a strike package valued at only $4 million, infiltrated Russian airspace. Supporting them were 35 UJ-22 UAVs, acting as decoys. Their objective? A $1.2 billion nuclear energy complex shielded by S-400 Panzer and Russia's $500 billion air defense network. Can 30 fighters break through Moscow's wall of steel? Or will they be swallowed by Russia's multi-billion-dollar defenses? Let's find out. November 7th, 2025, 4:12 a.m., Kiev time. The capital lay under a frozen shroud of darkness until the sirens screamed. In that instant, Russia launched Operation Winter Offensive. 45 K-35 Uran cruise missiles and 120 Shahed-style suicide drones tore across the night sky, obliterating 25 civilian and infrastructure sites across Kiev, Poltava, and Dnipropetrovsk. It was the largest nighttime airstrike since the invasion began. Chaos erupted, flooding Ukraine's radar screens. Alarms wailed through air bases. A storm of missiles was descending straight toward populated centers. Activate all defense systems, the commander ordered. 30 seconds later, S-300 and HIMARS batteries lit up the sky. 36 interceptor missiles shot upward like lightning. 9 incoming missiles were destroyed mid-air, but others broke through. The first explosions ripped through Obolon district. A 12-story apartment block collapsed in 19 seconds, crushing 87 residents beneath burning rubble. A nearby school was completely incinerated. Children's backpacks lay scattered across the snow. At 4:21 a.m., a maternity hospital lost all power. Nurses carried 11 newborns through smoke-filled corridors, guided only by the glow of their phones. By 6 a.m., 38 civilians were confirmed dead, 51 wounded, and over 9,000 displaced. More than 620 residential buildings were damaged. Within just 6 hours, the destruction exceeded $420 million. Kiev's central power grid lost 45% of its output, plunging 1.2 million residents into darkness. Heating stations shut down. Radiators turned cold. Supermarkets burned to ashes within 3 hours. In Poltava, temperatures dropped to -9 degrees Celsius, 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Families waited in lines for hours to collect boiling water from emergency tanks. Hospitals rationed generator fuel. Only 12 hours of electricity remained for surgical rooms. By dawn, one of Ukraine's key energy facilities had been destroyed, a symbol of Moscow's intent to freeze an entire nation into submission. But deep beneath Kiev, in the underground command center, silence turned to fury. Moscow called it Operation Winter Offensive. Kiev called it the crime in the snow. And as the smoke drifted eastward, one thing was certain: Ukraine would strike back, not with rage, but with a precision colder than the snow itself. That morning, the sun had not yet truly risen over the Kiev sky. Smoke still lingered in the air as President Volodymyr Zelensky descended into the underground command center, located 18 meters beneath the presidential residence. Around the table sat Ukraine's top generals, the intelligence director, and the energy minister, faces ashen with exhaustion and anger. The reports were brutal: 45 missiles, 120 unmanned aircraft, $420 million in damage, and one of the nation's critical power. If they want to freeze us, Zelensky said quietly, we will make them feel the cold too. That sentence marked the birth of Operation Spiral Gate, a counterstrike designed not for revenge, but for deterrence. The target: the Kalinin nuclear power plant located near Udomlya, Tver Oblast, roughly 200 miles northwest of Moscow. A facility employing more than 1,000 engineers and civilian staff, regarded as one of the pillars of Moscow's energy empire. Hitting it would not only damage the economy, it would humiliate the Kremlin. The Ukrainian Air Force presented its weapons: 30 F-16 Fighting Falcons, recently upgraded with AN/APG-68. Radars capable of detecting enemy aircraft at ranges of 180 kilometers, and armed with AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles that reach Mach 4 and have a 100-kilometer range. Supporting them, 35 UJ-22 airborne UAV valued at $100,000 would act as bait to expose the Russian air defenses. Facing them was Russia's S-400 Triumph, a $800 million air defense system, and Panzer S-1 batteries valued at $15 million each, all protecting a plant considered untouchable. Inside that dim bunker, everyone understood what lay ahead. Ukraine had lost $420 million in a single night. Now they would gamble US-funded weapons to achieve a target worth $1 billion. And when Zelensky gave the order, the words echoed around the room. Let them know, Moscow is not untouchable. Will Russia's untouchable shield truly stop the storm that Ukraine is about to unleash? 3:58 a.m., November 8, 2025. The night on Ukraine's border was very quiet. Too quiet. Then, one by one, 30 F-16 Fighting Falcons taxied down the frozen runway near Myrhorod Air Base. Engines thundered like storms beneath the starry sky, rattling the icebound ground. Operation Spiral Gate had moved from plan to execution. Each fighter carried 2 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles and a load of precision-guided bombs. Their radars were locked onto the Russian border, while a small, humble aircraft, a UJ-22 airborne UAV, worth just $100,000, launched ahead. Its mission: lure the Russian air defense network into the open. At 4:27 a.m., the UAV violated enemy airspace. Within 90 seconds, radar signals erupted across western Russia. Panzer S-1 systems protecting the energy complex activated and locked onto the false target. 5 interceptor missiles, each costing $1 million, were fired into the sky. The result? A plume of white contrails chasing a UAV that cost less than a luxury car. From Ukraine's control room, officers watched the screens light up in silence. Target illumination confirmed, one said. They've taken the bait. As the $5 million volley struck the decoy and detonated among the clouds, the real strike package climbed from 10,000 meters, slicing radar signatures with a precise formation. Every passing minute drained Russia's coffers. $7.3 million burned in operational losses, while Ukraine lost only a single drone. But Moscow's defense operators, blinded by their own radar jamming, mistook the phantom signal for a full-scale airstrike. The S-400 complexes, each missile costing $2.5 million, began firing into the sky. In less than 5 minutes, more than $40 million of ammunition vanished. The night sky erased by a wasted storm of fire. Meanwhile, under the radar horizon, the F-16s flew low, hugging terrain at Mach 1.2. The pilots said little. Every breath matched the rhythm of war. Calm, mechanical, certain. By 4:36 a.m., the command message passed through encrypted channels. Stage 1 complete. Begin attack. The trap had worked. Russia's shield was broken. And in the next 10 minutes, the costliest error in Moscow's air defense history would unfold. A battle where $4 million of Ukrainian steel would destroy $500 million of Russian pride. They thought the new decoy was the real threat. But the real storm had not yet even begun. Stay with me. The sky over Moscow is about to erupt. 4:06 a.m. Udomya, Tver Oblast. The night sky glowed red above the Kalinin nuclear power plant, Russia's pride, now its most vulnerable secret. 30 F-16. Fighting Falcons pierced Russian airspace at 10,000 meters, their afterburners leaving glowing scars across the frozen sky. Each jet carried a payload of 2 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles and precision-guided bombs, a strike package valued at $3.8 million, yet capable of inflicting hundreds of millions in losses within minutes. Below them, Moscow's S-400 Triumph defense system, worth $800 million, and a web of Panzer S-1 batteries, each launcher valued at $15 million, scrambled to respond. At 4:07 a.m., 12 interceptors worth $30 million roared upward. Their trails twisted through the darkness, hunting for heat. Within 90 seconds, 11 of the 20 inbound threats were destroyed. But the remaining 9 broke through, and what followed changed the map of Russian confidence. 3 AIM-120s struck the reactor complex, each carrying a 50-pound high-explosive fragmentation warhead, detonating deep within the steam generator hull. The blast tore through the reinforced containment layer designed to withstand earthquakes and airstrikes. A plume of fire rose nearly 1,000 meters high, visible from 25 miles away. Seconds later, 5 missiles tore into the cooling tower network and turbine chambers, collapsing 400 tons of steel and concrete. The last missile hit the main electrical switchyard, cutting 2.4 gigawatts from Moscow's grid. enough to power 1.5 million homes. The city's western sector fell into darkness for 14 minutes before emergency rerouting began. Inside the control center, chaos reigned. 12 dead, 470 seriously injured, and 2,312 emergency calls flooded Moscow's lines within 20 minutes. The explosions shattered 3,800 windows, buckled 7 bridges, and caused indirect industrial losses estimated at $600 million. Nearby hospitals, running on backup power, treated burns and trauma injuries non-stop for 18 hours. By 4:22 a.m., reconnaissance confirmed it. The plant was burning uncontrollably. Cameras captured scenes of workers fleeing under falling debris, a helicopter circling the inferno in vain. And at 4:25 a.m., as the last F-16s crossed back into Ukrainian airspace, one encrypted transmission echoed through the Kiev command room. Targets neutralized. Moscow's wall is broken. 30 aircraft, $4 million in ordnance, had shattered $1.2 billion worth of infrastructure, and the illusion of Russian invincibility. The balance of modern warfare had shifted. Speed, precision, and psychology, not size, now ruled the sky. 6:30 a.m., Moscow woke not to sunlight, but to the taste of ash. From the western skyline, a 14-mile column of smoke still rose from the crippled nuclear complex. Inside the city, metro tunnels stood silent, and more than 2.3 million residents faced blackouts. The energy grid had lost 2.4 gigawatts, collapsing power in 7 administrative districts. Traffic lights died. Hospitals switched to backup generators. The heartbeat of the capital, silenced in a single night. At 7 a.m., an emergency meeting convened inside the Kremlin's subterranean war room. President Putin, pale and expressionless, was handed the first casualty report. 30 dead, 477 injured, 1,000 displaced workers, and $1.2 billion in losses. The nuclear plant that had symbolized Moscow's strength was now an open wound, and its images had already gone viral across the world. By mid-morning, Russian intelligence agencies confirmed what the Kremlin feared. The attack was executed by a Ukrainian F-16 squadron using NATO standard encryption. Satellite data exposed the precision. Every missile strike was within 3 meters of its intended target. The humiliation was complete. 9 a.m. Across Europe, NATO held an emergency summit in Brussels. No condemnation came. Instead, a classified communique surfaced. Ukraine exercised legitimate self-defense. Hours later, the U.S. approved another $800 million aid package, including 250 additional UAVs and electronic warfare modules. In Kiev, celebrations were muted. Zelensky's command bunker remained lit by screens showing Moscow in flames. "This isn't victory," he said softly, "but a message that terror has a cost." By noon, international markets reeled. The Russian energy index fell 11%, erasing $23 billion in value in a single trading day. Panic rippled through global exchanges, and as the fires burned into afternoon, the world realized something irreversible. A $4 million Ukrainian strike had crippled a $500 billion Russian defense architecture. Steel walls had failed. Algorithms had won. War had changed. Forever. You can build fortresses of concrete and iron, but history always finds a way to fly through the window. By nightfall on November 8, 2025, the fire in western Moscow had dimmed, but the world it left behind would never be the same. The Kremlin's proud towers stood against a red horizon, silent, humiliated, and exposed. For the first time in decades, Russia's invincibility had been pierced not by nuclear power or economic might, but by precision, calculation, and human resolve. In Kiev, the lights flickered back on after nearly 40 hours of darkness. Families gathered in basements and stairwells, holding candles, whispering prayers. They had lost so much: homes, hospitals, entire neighborhoods. Yet the news of the counterstrike brought something the Russian missiles could not destroy: hope. For the first time, Ukrainians felt that the terror raining from the sky could be answered, measured, and punished. The numbers told a story that would echo in history books. $4 million in ammunition had shattered $1.2 billion in Russian assets, exposed the flaws of a $500 billion defense network, and disrupted a nation of 140 million for more than 48 hours. Economists called it the most cost-effective strike in modern warfare. Analysts called it the day deterrence was reinvented. But for those who lived through it, it was simply survival. As dawn approached, Zelensky addressed his people from the command bunker, his voice hoarse but steady. They tried to freeze our nation. Instead, they awakened it. That sentence would circle the world, replayed in capitals and military academies alike. Because the true lesson of the Winter Fire wasn't about destruction, it was about transformation. It proved that technology, courage, and precision could outweigh fear, wealth, and arrogance.